Evening, everyone. My name is Catherine Darnstadt. I'm with Leighton Design based in Chicago, and I'm part of the Northside Community Recreation Center and Park, also known as the Grubb YMCA design team. Tonight, I'll be taking you through the public meeting presentation and also a little bit of the public meeting activity that we had on November 4th last week. And also be sharing some links to the survey that you could participate in for those who were not at the meeting at that time. So to start, I want to give a little bit of background on the project to kind of level set and recap a little bit from meeting one. As I mentioned, this was the second public meeting of many, and we are working through thinking about what could be the future of the Grubb YMCA and Brian Milton Field. And that is what's now called part of the Northside Community Recreation Center and Park Plan. A little bit of background, we started as a consultant team, which I'll share our full consultant team in a couple of minutes. We started on this project back in September of this year, so we're just new to the project. We had a public meeting in October, and we're able to share some of this information to start with. The overall, what we're looking at is that the city of Des Moines has committed $12 million over 4 years to either rehab, renovation, or new construction for a Northside Community Center and Park that will encompass the Grubb YMCA. The Parks and Rec are looking at an anticipated construction completion date in 2025. With that completion date, and I'm talking through the background slide on the background content on the left, part of that is, having conversations with a broader community, existing partners, possible future partners, people who've been using the Y and the site for 30 years and people who have been using it for only, 3 days. Part of that is to understand what's happening at the center and what's possible for that future. And then this is also part of a collective community vision for the future of the site and the center. Now, for the second part in the center, the purpose of this, what we're part of and why we're as a consultant team are hired, is programming and planning. And that's to establish a set of project requirements and conceptual design options for a Northside Community Recreation Center. And this public meeting that we had on the 2nd really got into the programming elements of it. So that's looking at what kind of indoor activities are happening, what kind of outdoor activities are happening. Is it basketball or is it a book drive? And then us as a design team to start to think about how big and how much those spaces are based on the input that came from this second public meeting. We use every meeting we have, not only for project updates, but then also to gather information and share what we've learned and hear your feedback as well. And then the outcome on the right column, the outcome is to take these project requirements and start to put them forth in a conceptual design that will aid the city of Des Moines and Parks and Recreation in sharing a vision for what they see as part of a future Northside Community Recreation Center and Park, and also what that looks like for the community and how the community decisions and feedback influenced this final design option. Again, at this point, nothing is known what that design will look like, how big it will be, if it will include the current Y, if it will be a renovation to the Y, in addition to the Y, or a new facility itself. That's coming from these discussions and these public meetings that we're having, which is why it's important that we find multiple ways for people to participate, both in person and then, virtually through listening to this video, and then participating in surveys or comments as needed. At the bottom, What we see here are the phases and milestones that we're looking at for the project. So as mentioned, this project was started back in 2021. That's when our consultant team that we're a part of came onto the project. We had the first public meeting on October 14th. The second public meeting was November 4th, which I will talk through what was shared at that public meeting and then how people can virtually participate and provide their opinion. And then we have an upcoming public meeting on November 18th, where we'll, revisit some content from meeting 1 and 2 and continue to move it forward. They're in the new year. We'll have additional public meetings throughout early 2022. So look forward once those dates get established and will be broadcast and shared. Ultimately, what we want to share is how the team is guiding a vision, goals, and guiding principles. And we shared that at the meeting, and every meeting will always reference this because the goal is to serve community needs and provide opportunities for recreation through a vibrant world-class design. That design is driven by the community. And that's driven through a planning process that allows for it to be engaging, inclusive, equitable, and just. It also means that the design will reflect the collective vision of the community, which also means we have these meetings and we have public meetings so that we could hear, it's not only about check-ins and sharing information, it's about continually to gather feedback and to adjust the path and the trajectory of a project as well. We want ultimately this project to be both sustainable environmentally and economically. So a future Northside Recreation Center and Park has to look good, it has to feel like it responds to the community, and it has to operate for another 30, 40, 50 years. On the right, we have some of our guiding principles. We don't want to shy away from frank discussions, and we want to be courteous and respectful of others. At the meeting we had a lot of frank discussions, I think, both in the public realm and then one-on-one as people were doing the activity. And we hope those who are watching this will also be frank in the surveys and share their opinion and feedback, and do that also in the upcoming meetings that we'll be having this year and early next. We want to collectively strive for racial equity in planning and design for all communities. I mean, at the core of this is a desire to, understand that there have been previous, maybe inequitable processes within the city of Des Moines or within parks, but this is a new team, a new day, and a new vision to really try and be different and understand that. And that sometimes means we don't get it right the first try, but that doesn't mean we're going to stop trying. We also want to create opportunities for lasting involvement in the planning and decisions by all members of the community. As mentioned in the previous slide, this project is starting now and looking to go until 2025. And so that's a 4-year process, 3.5, 4-year process that has a lot of steps. It has a lot of steps that need a lot of community impact and feedback and input and support. And that's where we want to start to think about this one small segment of the project, how we can start to build an ecosystem that allows for more opportunities for involvement and feedback and continual updates throughout the project. We want as a team to be clear, specific, and direct so outcomes can be measurable, because we know we need to incorporate accountability into the implementation plans. Ultimately, in the end, we use the facility, but you use the facility as the broader community more every day for some people. And what does that accountability look like once it's being designed, once it's being constructed, and once it's being used? We want to create opportunities for that and hear your suggestions even on how to do that as well. This is a small snippet of the design team that was present at the community meeting number 2. So myself in the upper left, I'm Catherine again. I'm based in Chicago. We're an architecture and urban design firm here, and we're partnered with a great team of MA architecture led by Mindy Aust. And then also we had Anna Paloma and Woon Hee from MA Architecture that are working on the project and were also present at the meeting. As we mentioned, this is not only a community recreation center, but it's also a park. And we have a great landscape architecture team led by Brett Douglas of Genus Landscape and also Aaron Lewis, who both were present on the site. We have additional team members that are part of the project, and you'll probably meet in future community meetings that are working on looking at sports facility operations, looking at cost estimating, looking at sustainability and what are sustainability goals, not only for right now, but 2030 and then 2050 that are coming up. And so you'll meet members of those team of our team at future meetings as well. We also wanted to share what happened at the first meeting. You know, we met at the library and on October 14th, and we had a series of small group discussions around just kind of sharing the overall format of this programming and planning study, the schedule, you know, answered additional questions from the community about how decisions were made, and then ultimately how we got to this point. But the core activity of that meeting was to answer in small groups a series of 4 different questions regarding vision, resources, ideas for the community center, and themes, as well as kind of what we're missing in terms of these discussions. Some of the key takeaways we had was that the participants were very engaged, and that didn't change in the second public meeting. They were also very engaged and had a lot of memories to share, but a lot of really fantastic ideas and also challenging comments, which we appreciated, and it's taken some time to understand and digest all of that. We also saw that people are attending more from like one-on-one invitations and not a larger media or engagement outreach. So that's something that we're continuing to work on from meeting 1 to meeting 2 to meeting 3. There was a strong desire to not lose something to gain something. So many of the community members expressed this exact phrase that they don't want addition through subtraction. And that's kind of centering our thought process around what the future Northside Community Recreation Center and Park might look like. We don't want to feel like the community is losing something, you know, a building, a pool, a baseball field, a memorial, a memory. We don't want you to feel that you're losing something. We want to feel that it's an overall net gain and an improvement, no matter what that decision ultimately is, because that decision is guided by your feedback. The groups, again, we broke out in small groups. There was more of a focus on discussing like social and social programming that went on in the facility itself. You know, a lot of conversations around various backpack drives, holiday drives, after school tutoring. So we talked about those programmings that really anchor the community and less on the specific program elements like the gym or the track and field. So we kind of we had a kind of framed discussion around that, because we kept hearing more again about how those memories and those emotions of how people were thinking of the space and how they used it, that was really maybe a little bit off the program elements that you normally find in a rec center. We also found that attendees were not as familiar with park programming, fees, offerings, and that was new to them. So there was a lot of concern around, would programming be the same if Parks ran programming versus if the Y ran programming, or if another neighborhood group ran programming. And that helped inform some of the stations that we had at the second meeting to help alleviate that. This image is, we took all of those Post-it notes that you saw on the previous slide, and we distilled all the comments, read them all, distilled all the comments down, and pulled some of the popular programs that we heard that came from those discussions. And you see basketball, exercise, swimming, and sports kind of rising to the top, but a whole host of programming that we not only heard from the meeting, but then also was confirmed by a breakdown of all the programming that's currently happening at the Y over the last couple years. We also, as I mentioned, we heard a lot of memories, a lot of stories, a lot of really great stories about how people were using the Y. We pulled those out. What are some of the common emotions that people are feeling, and what are the words that are associated with that? So absolutely heard community, and that's what this center is. It's a community center. It's also a rec center. It's also a park, but at the core, it's all about community. We heard about accessibility not only in terms of universal design and movement and mobility, but accessibility in the ability to use the space and that it's available and for the people. And so we took that to heart to think about how does that impact programming and operations, and what is it about that kind of feeling of accessibility that's important. And that came down to the people who run the programs and who run the facility itself, is they make sure that the events that people want to have happen. And we also heard quite a bit about family spaces. This is a facility that allows for truly 8 to 80 and even younger to use the facility. And that's kind of a desire to continue forward, is to not lose programming that isn't family oriented, and keep that family orientation within within any future facility, so that people can be safe, youth can be safe, and that people can continue to have a social and supportive space to go to. All right, so now that was a recap of the project in general, a little bit of a recap of meeting number 1, and now we're into the agenda that we had for public meeting 2, and it will tweak a little bit, obviously, for your ability to be involved through the survey or virtually, but I want to share what we went through in the meeting specifically. So we started with that short presentation and introduction, so that went what I just shared, we went through that. We had a little bit more of open discussion, and an open discussion as a group, as a large group. And then from there, we went to a series of different stations, 5 different stations that were around the gymnasium itself. And they had different activities and information at each station. And I'll walk through those in a second. And then at the end, we didn't have a formal closeout, so you could have stayed at the event as much or as little time as you wanted, and were able to digest and talk to many, many different people that were representing multiple different stakeholders in the community. We were also really fortunate to have both the current and the new council person at the meetings, and so that was great for many community members to meet their future council person, and hear from her and her great team. So the first station we went through, and this is exactly the board that you would have seen in the gym at this station, and you'll also see this image on the survey, which I'll pull up in a couple minutes. So station 1 was a series of images, specifically around interior spaces and types of programming. There were 3 different boards with different images, and you had a series of sticky dots, just little dots, that you would be able to select your top 5 priority areas that you felt should be on the interior of a new program, a new recreation center and park, or outdoor activities as well. So we looked at both indoor and outdoor activities, indoor and then also outdoor activities at station 2. These were looking specifically at around different program spaces. At station 3, which we're not going to be able to replicate this in the survey, unfortunately, because this was a little bit more hands-on, we looked at different concepts for how to lay out the site, the overall project site, which includes Grubb and then the surrounding Brian Melton Field, and then from College all the way to 9th Street, which you see in the dashed and kind of highlighted green area on your screen. That was where we had a conversation around, can we rehab or reuse the existing Grubb YMCA. And we had a series of different size cutouts of both of outdoor programming, of baseball fields, of soccer fields, of concession stands that people were able to arrange on the site itself. At Station 4, we looked at a new construction concept. So the same site footprint that I showed previously, and then there were the same types of outdoor activities cut out to scale to arrange on the site. And then there were also a variety of different building sizes that people could lay out on the site to have a conversation around, well, if it's new construction, where should a building go? Where should the playground go? Where should volleyball, tennis, basketball court, where could a shelter, where could that all go around the site? And then people were also adding comments to that, and then sharing one-on-one with the facilitators that were at the station. And finally, the last station was Ask the City, a series of questions. We heard in the first meeting that there were a lot of questions about what our current rates, hours, what do community center, recreation centers offer already elsewhere across the city? Does Parks have scholarships, and where are they located? So we made a station that had some of that information, and then had also representatives from Parks and Recreation questions just directly, so that we could get those concerns alleviated, and people knew a point person to talk to and share. So that we thought was pretty successful to help get some of these concerns out in the open. But ultimately, the admission is free for youth under 17. Adults are $1 a day or $12 a month, and seniors can use parks facilities for free. And they generally are operating Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. But for the purposes of this exercise and thinking about programming, maybe the Grubb facility needs to operate on weekends. What does that look like then as well? Upcoming next, we are going to have a next community meeting on November 8th at 5:30 to 7, again at the same location. The Grubb YMCA will be together for about 90 minutes again, and work through some discussions, answering more questions, as we realize we need to take a little bit more time, because we had some people who were present for both meetings, some who were only present for one or the other. And so we want to have a third meeting to definitely make sure that we're getting all the information out, answering questions, and really making sure that people feel comfortable moving forward with this programming process, and hearing their concerns, both in large group and small group discussion. As we also mentioned, there is a dedicated website on Parks and Recreation, and now on the Des Moines homepage. So that was a great suggestion from someone at our community meeting, our second community meeting, to make sure there's a link on the Des Moines City's homepage to information about Northside Community Recreation Center, which is also the Grubb YMCA. We get that we're using two different names, and that could be confusing. But now we have information and the link also here, or you could get to it from the homepage of the city's website. And from this homepage, one thing I do want to share with you and show, it looks like this. You have a series of public meeting, frequently asked questions. You have the video presentation for meeting 1. You'll have the video presentation for meeting 2, which you're watching now. And then you can watch me again right here. And then some frequently asked questions and some downloads to share. We will also have a link to the survey, which will be how people who couldn't attend meeting 2 in person, this is how you can contribute your opinion to the boards and the stations that we had at meeting 2. So you'll get directed to a survey that looks like this. You'll see a station board that everyone saw in person, and you'll go through the same exercise of selecting your top 5 interior spaces. And then they're all listed here. So you could pick, easily what your 5 are and add. If we're missing something, you could always add other and type in what you're looking for. We also have outdoor spaces, as mentioned. You could do the same for each one, and then go through both station 1 and station 2, and select your top 5. At the end of the survey, we will have demographics that you could fill out. They're optional, but we would appreciate that. And then just submit, and we're good. All right. So with that, we'll close out this presentation for the public meeting number 2. Hopefully, we'll see you at meeting number 3, which again is November 18th at the Grubb YMCA in the gymnasium. And, I always appreciate talking to you in person, and also hopefully you enjoyed hearing a little bit from me online. And please use both the survey, that website to provide comments, because there's emails for comments, and looking forward to talking further about the project. Thank you so much for listening, and have a great evening.